MLS has always struggled to consistently win the CONCACAF Champions Cup. They've lifted the trophy just once in recent memory, and it was the Seattle Sounders back in 2022. Since then, it's been a brutal pattern of shortcomings. Toronto FC coming agonizingly close in 2018, LAFC falling short in 2020 and 2023, the Columbus Crew losing in 2024, and more recently, the Vancouver Whitecaps getting blown out in 2025. And honestly, it's just heartbreaking because MLS has came close so many times to winning this trophy, making the final more frequently than they had in the early years of this tournament. They're making it pretty much, I think it's 5 of the last 8 years, but they can't seal the deal except the one time with the Sounders. It's been a thorn in our side, and hopefully this is something that changes because it's been absolutely heartbreaking with all the shortcomings we've seen in this tournament for MLS. But this year feels a little different, and yes, I know we've heard that before. There are some genuinely strong teams in MLS this time around, especially in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, including Inter Miami. And today we're breaking down whether MLS actually has a real chance and which Liga MX team stand in their way in this CONCACAF Champions Cup preview. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to MLS Moves. Please make sure you like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. We have Eric Gomez of ESPN Deportes to come on and tell me which Liga MX team is the strongest heading into this tournament, and if he thinks MLS finally has a chance to hurdle this barrier and get the CONCACAF Champions Cup trophy in the United States. So now let's get to the video. Eric, it's that time of year, my friend. CONCACAF Champions Cup is right around the corner. Kicks off February the 3rd, so we're a week away, I think, from today when we're recording this until the tournament starts. And you know what? I'm happy to see you, but every time I see you, I'm a little sad because I go into this like with false hope that MLS has a chance to win this thing. And then I see you and I'm thinking, damn, I think this every year. So it's a little happy and a sad moment to see you, my friend. But how things going? How's life been?
Everything's great. Thank you for asking. I mean, I'm still a little bummed that we have to call it CCC now. I loved CCL back in the day when it was CONCACAF Champions League. But,
yeah,
there's no false hope there. I mean, ultimately, we've had the Seattle Sounders win it in the last, 4 or 5 years. And MLS is increasingly becoming a hindrance to Liga MX teams, whoever those might be, in this competition. And honestly, I think it's kind of their last stand to continue to prove that they hold some sort of dominance over MLS. Leagues Cup, you can throw that out, basically. We've talked about that a bunch in the past, but I think, the CONCACAF Champions Cup, if MLS starts winning that at a regular clip, then Liga MX really, really has a problem. So they are adamant about keeping that trophy locked away as much as they possibly can.
Yeah, and I'll just say real quick before we get into the talk about Liga MX teams, I'll say this: if Leagues Cup was truly better or more important than the CCC, which I also hate, love CCL, if it was more important, then the teams winning Leagues Cup wouldn't be giving them qualification spots to play in CCC.
Sure.
So obviously this is a bigger deal, bigger tournament, and it's played at both venues, which is a more fair tournament, right? Just to give each team their home and away. So we're in agreement with that. Leagues Cup's a money grab. We all know it. Not a fan of it. Is what it is. Hopefully, if they do keep it, they'll eventually fine-tune it and change it up a little bit. But the first question I want to ask you, Eric, is, and I'm going to bring up this list of all the teams that are in the league or in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. Let me pull this list up real quick. I want to ask you, who do you think is the strongest Liga MX team heading into the 2026 CONCACAF Champions Cup?
Yeah, no doubt that's got to be Toluca, right? They're the two-time defending champions in Liga MX. When I look at this roster, I don't see any holes. I mean, even with Alexis Vega out for being injured these last few months, he actually missed part of the Liga MX playoffs last time around. That team is stacked top to bottom. They've done a fantastic job of creating signing star power, but creating depth for that team. And they got the absolute best manager that they possibly could. I mean, this is a guy, Antonio Mohamed, who, you and I have spoken at length in the past about certain managers that maybe MLS should have tried to get, like Miguel Herrera back in the day. This is a guy that I think MLS would be fantastic. It would be fantastic if they would have him, right? If any team in this league could sign an Antonio Mohamed, that would be perhaps even a bigger impact than having Tata Martino, right? Coaching at the likes of Atlanta United and Inter Miami. He's that good. And this is the only tournament that is available to him in Mexico. He's Argentinian, but he's coached in Mexico for the better part of the last 25 years. This is the only tournament that he does not have, right? He's won the league a bunch of times, I think 5 times with 4 different teams. He's won, the Mexican Cup, which is no longer in effect. He's basically done everything that every single team has asked him to do. This is the one tournament that he doesn't have, and I think he would be just delighted to be able to take it for Toluca and just kind of stamp his name in that Mount Rushmore of Liga MX coaches.
Yeah, and so obviously Toluca, like you said, been good for a while. I remember heading into Leagues Cup, they were saying that was the team to beat from Liga MX, and the Seattle Sounders did beat them pretty bad, but that, there's context, nuance. They beat them in Seattle, or Seattle won 7-0 at Seattle. It's a very far distance to travel, and there's always the commitment question: how much Liga MX teams even want to be there? Are they even trying? Whatever it may be. But as far as Toluca in Liga MX this past season, because they're always getting confused. I can't remember if the Clausura or the Apertura is first. Is it the Clausura is first, right?
No, the Apertura is the one that runs from August to December, July to December, and then you get the Clausura that closes out the season January through May.
So they're in the Clausura right now.
Right.
Now, as far as teams playing right now, how much ahead would you see? Because there's 6 teams right now. There's obviously Club América, Monterrey, Toluca, Cruz Azul, Tigres, and Pumas. How much ahead is Toluca ahead of all these other clubs right now? Like, is there even a close second?
Yeah, I mean, again, right now Toluca is the second place team in the league, but we're only 3 games in, right? So you take that with a grain of salt. Chivas is in first place. They're not playing the Champions Cup, obviously. And I think it's interesting. You look at the 6 teams that are in it for Mexico, and basically everybody is in that sort of qualification zone, because Mexico, they do play a postseason that resembles, the NFL or the NBA in terms of playoffs. A lot of these teams are in that zone even after just 3 games. The 2 teams that are outside of the zone right now are Tigres, who made the Liga MX final, and everybody knows Tigres. They've been just such a great team and such a great representation of Liga MX over the last 10 years mostly. And Club América, right? Club América, the team that preceded Toluca with back-to-back-to-back titles. I mean, they three-peated, and they're just kind of in a transition phase right now. They're getting their bearings together, but I obviously wouldn't rule them out, right? So Toluca being up there in second place, unbeaten after 3 games, that's a really good sign for me, and just a good omen that they're ready for this tournament moving forward.
So we start off the show where I said that I'm a little sad when I see you, just because the false hope I normally have heading into this tournament, right? And hopefully it becomes more competitive to where that doesn't really matter, that I'm not wanting an MLS team to win. Like, I just want to see entertainment where it can go back and forth between both leagues, but it has been dominated by Liga MX since it's whatever it's been called. Liga MX is dominated, right? I want to ask you about Liga MX chances, and which MLS team scares you this year, because there's always this false hope of a team from MLS maybe being able to do it, right? Now, yes, Seattle did win in 2022. But if I'm being fair, I think that was probably one of the weaker finals we've seen. I don't think that Pumas team was as strong as we've seen some of these other CCL or CCC teams in the past. But, there's always been these MLS teams that come up short. Is there any team that scares you on the MLS side heading into this tournament?
I think the bracket, just the way that the teams were placed in this schedule, favors Inter Miami just so much. They're obviously the team to watch from the MLS side. When you talk about, guys like I talked about Antonio Mohamed, the Toluca coach, and him not having that title, that being like the last thing that he needs to figure out in his career. I mean, Lionel Messi is an absolute dog when it comes to this type of stuff. Like, he doesn't care what the trophy is. He wants it. He doesn't have this one, so he's going to go out there and he's going to try and win it. This is a special season for Miami, as we all know. They're inaugurating their new stadium. Everybody's super excited over there. And this is a team that, is coming off their own MLS Cup run. They're just loaded, right? They're just loaded. I don't want to hear anything about how it's an old roster, Lionel Messi, that, Luis Suarez was brought back or whatever. This is a really, really good team, again, from top to bottom. They're so explosive up front that I do believe that it's going to present a lot of issues for any team that they go up against in this bracket. And when you look at it, the first Mexican team that they will potentially face is Club América. As I said, that team's coming through a transitional phase, right? I don't see a scenario right now where Club América goes into a game, a two-leg situation with Inter Miami and them being the favorites. That being said, they're really good at these types of tournaments. As I said before, most of the team won 3 titles in a row in Liga MX not too long ago. And then after that, the second Mexican team that they would potentially face is Tigres. Tigres, they're kind of in a weird spot. Like, this is their final run with a lot of these players. And I know I keep saying this, but these guys keep playing. Gignac is 40 years old. Nahuel Guzman, their goalkeeper, is also 39, 40 years old. They're coached by an old teammate of those guys, Guido Pizarro. And they really do look the part when it comes to postseason soccer. I mean, they did make the final last season against Toluca, so they're definitely talented. They've got Marcelo Flores, who everybody knows right now is doing his one-time switch move from Mexico to Canada. He'll probably be at the World Cup for them. It's a very, very good roster, but I do think that they are inconsistent at times. So I see Inter Miami being favored against them as well. And, essentially you would need a third Mexican team to match up with them in the final if everything goes right for Inter Miami. And I'm going to call it right now. I mean, I see a Toluca versus Inter Miami final just from the outset. Those are the 2 strongest teams in this tournament.
Yeah, I've been looking at the teams that are in this tournament, and obviously my knowledge is limited with Liga MX, which is why I'm glad to have you here to kind of teach me a little bit, tell me about what's going on, how these teams are in form. Now, when I look at it from an MLS perspective, I look at these teams, and obviously Miami is the heavy hitters this time. They have scrapped the Barca Messi friend plan, and they went all youth, all best talent they possibly can get. And we were texting last week, and you and I were about them getting Berterame from Monterrey. That's going to be a huge asset for them because they've never had a striker like him, especially since Messi's been there. Luis Suarez is almost 40 years old himself, and obviously he's very limited at this point. He's more of a bench player at this point. I mean, he just he can't run anymore. I don't know if he really could have run the last couple of years. Very interesting to watch him run at this point. I actually call him La Tortuga at this point because he's so slow. Right. But Berterame, I think, is very good. We saw what he could do in Liga MX. I know he was I think he scored at least every other game. I'm not trying to say, I know Canales has been a very good playmaker for Monterrey, but I don't think that he's ever had the service no one's ever had the service like Lionel Messi. He's 1-on-1, right? So he's going to have the best playmaker behind him, feeding balls through to him. And I feel like, we've never seen that in MLS, this type of service and this type of quality in the final third. So I think that they're going to probably be the best chance for MLS. And then I also think that, the Galaxy, I'm not really so sold on them. Vancouver, the team who made it to the final last year, they've lost a lot of players, though. They've lost a lot of players. I just think this is now LAFC was a team, Son Heung-min, been playing very well. I think this is a very weak pool for MLS. But there's always surprises. I don't think anyone would have thought that Vancouver would have made it last year.
Yeah, absolutely. To the final. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I look at it right now and say San Diego FC against Pumas. San Diego FC, they're going to be favored to win and move on. But the bad news for them is they're going to be facing Toluca right after, right? So that's not going to go well for them. The Galaxy could potentially get through those first two rounds. Guess what? Quarterfinals, they're probably going to be facing Toluca, right? And then further, you move down on the bracket. Vancouver has a very, very tough assignment with Cruz Azul. They're the defending champions in this tournament. They're just not going to lay down and move aside for anybody, especially in the first round. There's been a lot of controversy surrounding them over the last few weeks. They've been trying to bolster their squad. They were very, very close to getting Miguel Borja, a very talented Colombian attacker from River Plate in Argentina. That fell through. So they're still kind of scrambling to try to get better players, not just for Liga MX, but obviously for the CONCACAF Champions Cup. I still look at that matchup and think Cruz Azul is the better of those two teams.
Well, just make the distinction too of that's Vancouver FC. That's the Canadian Premier League team. That's not the Whitecaps.
Yeah, the Whitecaps, they're on the other side of the bracket, and they're going to be facing off with Tigres at a certain point, right? Or América. Yeah. So still, when you look at the remaining teams in MLS, the only single team that I look at and say it doesn't matter who they face, they're probably the better team, or they have a very, very good chance at winning. That's Inter Miami, right? We can make arguments for pros and cons for each and every one of those teams. Nashville, I think, is interesting, but they're going to be facing off with Inter Miami as soon as they get past Atletico Ottawa. It's just the magic of the cup, right? I mean, we've got these seedings in this bracket that's kind of set already, so you kind of know who is going to be facing off against the round of 16 teams that went on automatically, and that's just going to make this tournament a lot more interesting as we move forward. I'm not ruling out any surprises, but I think right now, when I look at the bracket, I'm making my picks pretty confidently.
Yeah. So I asked you earlier about the first and second best teams, right? Like if there was a team that could really maybe, I don't want to say unseat Toluca as your favorite, but someone maybe is close runner up. Is there any under the radar teams that you think maybe, well, we've kind of broke through the bracket a little bit, but is there a chance that Club América could be a thorn in Inter Miami's side, or maybe Monterrey or Tigres? You said that they're getting older. Like if you had to pick one team from Liga MX that could be the under the radar Vancouver Whitecaps of last year, but for Liga MX this year, who would it be?
Yeah, it sounds weird to say, right? We're talking about them potentially losing their best striker, but I still think Monterrey, pound for pound, they've got a really, really good team. And that's not just Sergio Canales. It's Oliver Torres, the former Atletico Madrid midfielder. They've got a breadth of young Mexican talent. A lot of those guys are going to be at the World Cup for Mexico probably. So, Fidel Ambriz, Gerardo Arteaga, Victor Guzman, their back line is really, really solid. And I think we saw them rise to the challenge in the FIFA Club World Cup last year. And, Sergio Ramos is not there anymore, obviously, but 95% of that team is there. They've only gotten better. They've made a couple of signings that I really like. But it's going to be very, very interesting to see what they do without Berterame, because, even with Anthony Martial, the former Manchester United forward playing there, he hasn't really shown what he's capable of. He's only scored 1 goal in 15 games for Monterrey. But you look at the names on paper, and that's just such a star-studded team that, potentially in a series against Inter Miami, those dudes are not going to be frightened by the sight of Lionel Messi, especially when you've got players that have won the World Cup or that have suited up for their national teams, France, Spain, Argentina. This is a very, very, very stacked team, and I'm very excited, hopefully, to get to see either Monterrey or América or Toluca even face off against Inter Miami at some point during the Champions Cup. That's going to be super exciting.
If I had to pick my team, who I think is the most under the radar team, it's going to sound funny too, kind of like what you were saying, but I think it's going to be the Whitecaps, man. A lot of people they just lost the Champions Cup last year to Cruz Azul. They lost the MLS Cup final to Inter Miami. But if you look at their bracket, they're at the same side as Inter Miami, but they're gonna have to play. I'm not familiar with this team. Let me pull this down real quick just so we can look at it. I'm assuming that this might be a Panamanian or maybe Honduran team that the Whitecaps are playing.
Oh, Costa Rica. Yeah.
Costa Rican. Okay, Costa Rican team. They're going to be playing them, and then they play the Sounders. Sounders aren't very good, in my opinion. And then if you look at who they could play, yeah, they could play Tigres, but they're not going to play them until the quarterfinals of the
Right.
tournament.
Yeah.
So I think the Whitecaps could be a sneaky good team, and they did sign Thomas Muller this past summer, and I do think he helped them out a little bit more at the end of the season. Not necessarily with quality, but with confidence, because he's one of the most decorated players in football history. He's literally won everything. So I think he's kind of giving them a confidence boost, even if they have lost some talent. So I think the Whitecaps, funny enough, are probably my under the radar team for MLS. I think they could. Everyone's talking about Miami, but the Whitecaps could be that team that just kind of coasts by and then eventually meets Miami in the semifinals of this side of the bracket. So that would probably be my team in MLS. Now, I want to ask you too about scheduling, right? Or actually, first, we'll hold off on the scheduling part. Who do you think is going to win this? Who do you think is going to win this tournament? Do you think it's going to be Toluca?
I mean, I think it's going to be Toluca, and I'll tell you why. I mean, this is a team that has been battle tested over the last year. The first thing they had to do to get back and win the league in Mexico was beat Club América. They were gunning for their 4th consecutive title at that point. And I think most of the press here, most of the fans thought that was kind of a foregone conclusion. That I mean, Toluca, no matter how good they were just kind of standing in the way of that 4th consecutive title, and they won confidently. This is a very, very good team. I think there's no holes on this team. Not defensively, not in the midfield, and definitely not in attack. And I don't think that they're going to be intimidated. As I said earlier about Monterrey, Toluca is another one of those teams that just kind of has no fear about them. And I think they're very, very well coached. I think that's an advantage, if you can call it that. I mean, Mascherano's a fantastic young coach, but ultimately he's got Lionel Messi on his team, right? He doesn't really have to do a lot of planning and a lot of tactical shifts. Antonio Mohamed is a master, and he finds the weaknesses in every single team that he's facing. I mean, to kind of put it in NFL terms, he's kind of like a Sean McVay or a Bill Belichick in the sense that he's going to go after your weak spot every single time. So I love that about him. And as I said before, this is the one title that he doesn't have, and this is the one title that Toluca have not won in quite a bit. If you look at the pantheon of the teams that have won this tournament the most, América, Club América, and Cruz Azul, they've got 7 each, right? So they're at the very, very top. And when you look at the teams that are currently in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, especially on the Mexican side, Toluca's got to be feeling really, really good about their chances. You said it earlier, and I think that's the key. This is a home and away series until you get to the one-legged final, and that's going to be super interesting for me because it's winner take all. It's one game, but even in that respect, I still like Toluca's chances to win their first. I think this would be the first title in CONCACAF since 2003, right? So, wow. Yeah, that would be huge for them. Really, really big fan base in Central Mexico. I still like them over Inter Miami. I just think they're younger. I think they're better coached.
So I'm going to be on the opposite end of the spectrum from you on this one. Here's my thing, and I know that there's going to be some Liga MX fans who are going to kill me for saying this and say, "Oh my God, have you not learned, you idiot? We always beat you 20-1 in trophies the last how many years." But here's my line of thinking, right? Inter Miami just won MLS Cup, which obviously doesn't translate to winning Champions Cup. But instead of an MLS team that typically gets worse after winning because the weird MLS roster rules, they've gotten better. Yeah. I mean, like you just said, they just took Monterrey's best striker. They signed him for $15 million, $60 million whenever that gets announced. They have Mateo Silvetti, a young Argentine left winger who's very, very talented. They got Tadio Allende, who just broke the MLS record for most goals in the playoffs. He scored 9 goals in the playoffs in MLS. They signed Mikael on loan from Palmeiras, a center back who was good in MLS, struggled in South America. But if we're being honest, Eric, Brazil's a totally different animal. It's a very good league. It's not like you're a bad player if you don't make it down there. And they signed Dane St. Clair, the best goalkeeper, or one goalkeeper of the year in MLS from Minnesota United, got him to come over. So this is a team, and their owner said, we're not done. We're chasing CONCACAF Champions Cup. We want to win this. So here's what I'll say. I'm not saying they will win it. I'm saying they should win it because they
Sure.
have Lionel Messi. They have all these good players. They've got guys like Berterame who has played in this tournament, who does know Liga MX teams, which I think is something underrated people need to talk more about. Having a
Right.
player on your team that knows the league they're going against is very important. And I think that
Absolutely.
that's something you can't discredit. I think they should win it. I don't know if they will win it. We'll have to see. I mean, anything can happen in CONCACAF Champions. This is my favorite tournament that there is. I love this, man. This is great. And I'm glad that even if MLS gets their ass kicked every year, it's become more serious. And I do think that Liga MX fans have started to respect MLS a little bit more because we've made the final like what, of the last 7, 8 years?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's one thing that we're kind of underrating as far as this year's tournament. And the one thing that I think could work against Inter Miami, and that is the fact that this tournament ends, the final is literally 10 days before the World Cup kicks off.
Yeah.
Right. I
Yeah.
mean, the final is May 30. I just don't know how hard these teams are going to kind of push their stars. I don't know how much pressure a guy like Lionel Scaloni coaching Argentina is going to exert on Javier Mascherano and say, "Hey, take care of our boy. Like he's out there. He's going to try and defend the World Cup in a couple of weeks here. So don't push him too hard. I mean, I know that's practically impossible for a guy like Lionel Messi, who, as I said before, is just an absolute dog and is going to try to win absolutely everything. But when he, takes a look perhaps at what the stakes are, and he's going to be 39 this year, and this is going to be his last World Cup. What's going to matter more when he puts everything just, on the scales? Is he going to be winning the CONCACAF Champions Cup or giving himself the best opportunity he can to defend Argentina's World Cup win in 2022 and potentially go back to back, right? I think that's kind of an underrated factor. When I look at Toluca's roster, there's going to be just a couple of players maybe that make the 26-man roster for Mexico. There might be a couple of other foreign players that have a shot at their country's final roster, but I just don't see that problem. You know what I mean? I think it's not, even Berterame, if he goes into Miami, he's going to have to watch himself because he's going to be on the Mexico roster, come next June. So you're going to have issues with players potentially looking at their fitness. Yes, trying to be in form. Yes, trying to win titles, but making sure that their number one priority is not getting injured or not being too tired for the World Cup in June. So that's like the one thing that I look at and say, I'm not sure if I like that for Inter Miami. And I'm not sure even if a guy like Lionel Messi would never admit to it, he's going to be watching out for as this tournament sort of unfolds.
Well, I want to ask you one more question before we head out. And I'm sure we'll have you back on for some more CONCACAF Champions Cup coverage. Now, this is a big deal for MLS. Now, one of the biggest excuses, and I think there's legitimacy to it when you think about the schedule starting, is MLS starts they're going to be playing their first Champions Cup game before their season even starts. They're in preseason right now, right? Now, recently they changed the schedule. They're going to be playing a similar schedule to Liga MX now. They're going to be starting in late July or early August, playing until December, and then they'll be playing from February till May, maybe even the first week of June with the playoffs.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we might have talked about this before, but do you think that this is going to have any impact on CONCACAF Champions Cup going forward from a winner's perspective? Is this going to change the winner of this tournament?
I told you I had a hot take about this before we went on air, so I'm going to share it right now.
Yeah.
I've always thought that there are two things holding MLS back in terms of their regional dominance against Liga MX. One of those things is the salary cap and just the DP rule, the way that roster construction is handled in MLS. Teams are almost always going to favor signing attacking players, and the rap on MLS has always been that defensively, most of those teams are bad. You can hurt them in their back lines, right? The second one is the schedule. I think MLS has always been at a disadvantage when playing the CONCACAF Champions Cup and other tournaments in general, but the CONCACAF Champions Cup specifically because of the way that their schedule had previously been made up, right? Now you're going to be going into this tournament mid-season practically. Everybody's going to be in form, and you have the best shot at winning the CONCACAF Champions Cup, not just, 1 year out of every 3 or 4, but basically truthfully competing to win it year in and year out based on the form that those teams are going to find themselves in when the tournament starts and perhaps more importantly, when the tournament ends, right? I've seen so many MLS fans complain about being bounced out of the CONCACAF Champions Cup, previously the CONCACAF Champions League, and their arguments being something along the lines of, well, dude, my team's in preseason right now. Like, this shouldn't even happen. You're not going to have that excuse anymore, and it's going to benefit MLS so much to be able to compete with, players and teams having 15, 20 league games under their belts. And I think the schedule and the way that it's constructed now, that it's more in line with the rest of the world, is going to allow them to build their rosters differently. And to kind of expand on my hot take, I think ultimately it's going to lead to maybe not destroying the salary cap entirely, but loosening it to a point where, you've got an opportunity to sign 4 or 5 DPs. And when that happens, everybody's in trouble, not just Liga MX, but if everything goes to plan and Liga MX and MLS are admitted into Copa Libertadores by 2027, 2028, even the South American teams are going to have a handful when they visit MLS teams for sure. So I absolutely love this move.
All right, I got a question I want you to answer off the top of your head. Okay, I'm not gonna hold you to this. There's obviously nuance, context, but I just want to ask you: with the schedule change, next 10 years,
right?
How many times do you think MLS wins it the next 10 years after this change is made?
Over under is 4.5 for me.
So you're close to 50%. You're very close to 50%.
Absolutely.
Okay. And I think, Eric, if that happens, that's going to make this tournament even better.
It's gotta. And listen, you're going to take advantage now. You're going to switch up your transfer window rules. So you're going to have a transfer window just like everybody else. These teams are going to be mid-season. They're going to be looking at their rosters come December, come January, and say, I need to make a title run here. I need to go win MLS Cup, and I'm also in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, and I need to make sure that my roster is deeper and better for these 2 tournaments. So what's going to happen? These teams are going to be strategizing for both of those tournaments, and they're going to do so at midseason instead of basically figuring out what they need at the start of the season. And then, CONCACAF Champions Cup ends, and a lot of these teams are going to be looking at the regular summer transfer window when most players are available, and you're going to give them a chance to acclimate to their new team in MLS, whether they're coming from Europe or whether they're coming from Mexico or South America, and you're going to do that the way the rest of the world does it. You have no idea how much of an advantage that is. I've always thought it's so weird for players to kind of cut their summer vacation short when they come to MLS and be thrown into the last 2-3 months of the season and expect them to be as good as they've always been. That's so rare when that happens. Now you've got an opportunity to do that in the summer at the start of the season, and then in January to really bolster your roster to just, go and make those title runs. So if MLS does not win 4 out of the next 10 CCCs, as soon as that schedule change is made, my friend, something went awfully wrong.
I agree. Eric, it's always a pleasure to have you on, my friend. We will see if MLS can come out victorious in this tournament that is always a nightmare in the final end for most of the teams. But before I let you go, where can the people follow you at?
Yeah, man. I'm on X, Eric Gomez 86. I'm also on Blue Sky, same thing. Writing for ESPN as always, and for your audience out there, if anybody speaks Spanish, writing columns on ESPN Deportes as well. So that's it. But yeah, I'm calling my shot right now. Toluca versus Inter Miami in the final, and 4 out of the next 10 CCCs for MLS.
Well, we'll see, man. I can't wait to watch it. Love this. Best time of the year. Eric, I appreciate it. Until next time, guys, I will see you all soon.